Putin, to be quite frank, is too scared, too paranoid, and too frail and too old to be doing the type of stuff that Zelensky's doing. I want to talk about Zelensky for a moment. Let's see if we can talk about Zelensky for a moment. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Volodymyr Zelenksy went to Bakhmut, and I don't know if you guys know where Bakhmut is. I think we can pull it up quickly if we go to live map. Bakhmut is on the front line of the war. It is being fought over viciously right now. The Russians really want to capture it because it's important to capture if the Russians are going to capture Kramatorsk, which is the last big city they would want to catch. Donetsk.
Burns is
basically
morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
Thank you very much, Carney01, for the Prime and being sub for 4 months. Basically, it's integral for the Russians to capture if they want to capture the Donbass, which is one of the publicly stated war goals of the Russian Federation. The Russians have been unable to capture Bakhmut after well over a month of fighting. They're going on 2 months now. They've been trying to capture it since November, and they still have yet to make significant progress in taking a large portion of the city. As you can see, here's Bakhmut. They're not really in the city. They're fighting on the city outskirts, but they keep getting pushed back, or they gain a little, they lose a little, all for very high casualties. There's high casualties on the Russian side, and there's high casualties on the Ukrainian side. And Zelensky did something that's honestly embarrassing for Putin. Despite the fact that the Russian government has tried to assassinate Zelensky countless times, is getting to the level of assassination attempts we've had on like Fidel Castro, for God's sakes, despite how dangerous it is and the fact that he was not only within rocket range, but artillery range, and the Russians really want to capture and or kill him, Zelensky went to the city of Bakhmut, awarded a bunch of people medals, made like a quick speech, and the local soldiers even handed Zelensky a Ukrainian flag with the intention of him delivering it to the U.S. Congress, the United States Congress, which, as we know now, tomorrow on December 21st, 4 days before Christmas, he's going to be speaking to the United States Congress. By the time this video is on YouTube, he will have most likely already spoke to the United States Congress. Let's just show you a little bit of footage of that before I finish talking about this.
Бійці, яких ви сьогодні нагородили, написали нашим побратимам з Америки всі самі прекрасні слова. Просимо вас передати по можливості.
Ну, за зброю.
Да.
За зброю.
За зброю, да.
Добре, все передамо.
Дякую.
So the reason why this in particular I think is humiliating for Putin is because this isn't even the first time Zelensky has done something like this. I don't know if you guys remember, but during the battle for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, Zelensky also went to the front line, went to the bunkers, and talked to the soldiers who were fighting for that city before there was a major Ukrainian counteroffensive in the area. Eventually, the Russians did end up capturing Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, but now the Ukrainians are trying to push back to recapture it now. But basically, what I'm trying to get at is Zelensky is not shying away from the front line and talking to soldiers on the front line and putting himself in dangerous positions to really lead this war from the front. He's been an amazing figurehead for this war. He's been quite a good wartime leader. I think the main reason why he's been a good wartime leader is because A, he has been very public and in front of the camera. He has media experience from his time in movies and television and Ukrainian media. He has a lot of experience with it, so he knows how to garner international attention and have people sympathetic for the Ukrainian cause because it's a good moral cause. He's a good ambassador talking about an important issue. And the second reason is that he's let the generals do their commanding. He's let the generals, the experts, do the war fighting. A lot of times political leaders will get very touchy when it comes to war, and they'll want things done by certain deadlines, and they'll push the generals to do things for political reasons, or they'll get very full of themselves and start thinking that, like, you know, they're Napoleon Bonaparte and they're the expert of warfare and they know what they're doing, and then they get really hands-on and they make really stupid, ignorant decisions because they don't know anything about fighting a war. But Zelensky has generally left the generals do the fighting, which is good, which is very good. I don't really know if Poroshenko, who was the other candidate who ran against Zelensky, who's the former president of Ukraine if he would have been as hands-off. And so that fact that Zelensky's been such a good figurehead, he's, been communicating very well with the international community, he's let the generals do the fighting, has led to him being an excellent wartime leader, and not only a lot of support in Ukraine with very high approval rating in Ukraine, but also a lot of support internationally. And that's as we can see right here, he's leading from the front. Now, compare that to Vladimir Putin, who for the majority of the war has been hiding in bunkers or all the way in Moscow, St. Petersburg, way from the front line. In fact, even after he announced the annexation of Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, and Luhansk, he has never entered the Ukrainian territory during the war, despite the fact that he says this is part of Russia and he thought it was safe enough to host his sham rubber stamp referendum. He has never gotten anywhere near the front line. In fact, over the weekend, St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, was closer to the front line than Putin was. Look at that. Adorable. Anyway, we don't need to watch this whole video. Video is very cute. Santa Claus on the front line. But where Putin was, as Zelensky was visiting the front line, Putin was in Belarus talking to Lukashenko, trying to get him involved in the war, directly involved in invading Ukraine. Not only was he not near the front line, he was trying to get more support for his invasion because his invasion is not going well. And according to the Institute for the Study of War, he failed. Not only did he failed pretty miserably. He didn't even get close. Let's read the ISW's statement on this, their assessment of this. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko likely deflected Russian President Vladimir Putin's efforts to coerce Belarus into further Russian-Belarusian integration concessions during a meeting in Minsk on December 19th. Putin and Lukashenko refrained from publicly discussing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with both leaders noting that Belarus still faces a Western threat. Putin announced that he may consider training Belarusian combat aviation crews for use of munitions with special warheads due to the escalating situation on the Union state external borders. ISW has previously assessed that Lukashenko uses the rhetoric of defending Belarusian borders against the West and NATO in an effort to avoid participating in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Lukashenko has also used similar hints about the possible deployment of nuclear weapons in Belarus on February 17th in the context of claimed Western aggression. Lukashenko noted that Russia will deliver S-400 air defense complexes and Iskander missile complexes, while Putin stated that both leaders discussed the formation of United Defense Space. ISW continues to assess that Belarus' participation in Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine remains unlikely. Anyway, despite all the fear of Putin generally, that I think a lot of people have, definitely a lot of people in Russian society and a lot of his allies have, of repercussions from Putin if they don't do what he wants. Lukashenko knows that the war is not going well for the Russians. He knows that at every single level, the Russians have failed. They have failed to achieve the demilitarization of Ukraine. They have failed to achieve regime change in Ukraine. They have failed to capture all of the Donbass, and they have failed to hold on to their annexed territories. They have failed to stop NATO expansion into other countries, as Sweden and Finland are on track to join NATO. And there is now more NATO training of Ukrainian troops than ever, and more integration with NATO and the European Union than ever, as Ukraine is trying to move on that track, and more Ukrainian support joining NATO at 83% than ever. At every single level, Russia has failed. Not only have they failed, but they're now being pushed back. They got pushed back as the Ukrainians pushed them out of the Kharkiv Oblast and recaptured the city of Kupiansk. They lost the city of Lyman, and they lost the only provincial capital they have ever captured for the entirety of the war after they lost the battle for the city of Kherson, the most major liberation the Ukrainians have made for the entirety of the war. And this is all happening as, again, Zelensky's stunting on him, posing imposing on Putin by visiting the front lines, shaking hands with the grunts, letting them know he appreciates their efforts, awarding them missiles, making speeches in dangerous territory, leading from the front before going home. But Putin, to be quite frank, is too scared, too paranoid, and too frail and too old to be doing the type of stuff that Zelensky's doing. Knowing that most likely Ukrainian special operators are operating within Russia and the activity of partisans in Ukraine, Putin's probably too scared to get anywhere near the front line. And despite the overwhelming majority, the overwhelming superiority that Russia has in artillery, Zelensky's still going to the front. Honestly, for, you know, all the masculine values that Putin and the Russians espouse to have with their manly military ads, as they talk about the degenerate West with their homosexuality and their transgenderism and their this and their that and their drug use and the whatever, despite all of that, it seems like the degenerate, evil Zelensky is more willing to put himself in danger for his country than Putin is. Which isn't a huge surprise, honestly, because even though I generally stay away from hero worship, I do think Putin has a lot less integrity than Zelensky, and he is willing to, not as willing to put himself on the line for his country. Not a huge surprise, since he's risking the entirety of his country's future over his own political success due to him trying to salvage this war. Putin generally got humiliated by Zelensky here. Say one thing, despite Putin not going to the front line, there was one person who responded to Zelensky going to the front line. I can't believe I almost forgot to mention this. The leader of the Wagner group actually went somewhere near Bakhmut. He doesn't really clarify exactly where he is to like say, hey Zelensky, I'm here. And he says like, hey, I want to meet you. Okay, I'm gonna fire Morse code from this gun, and you can come meet me, the leader of the Wagner group. Again, he's not the leader of Russia. He's the leader of the Wagner group, which was founded by a neo-Nazi and is now being made up more and more out of actual rapists, drug dealers, murderers, and criminals as they recruit from prisons. But I mean, you know, Diet Putin is Diet Putin, I guess. Let's watch. Let's see the leader of the Wagner group show us some unique Wagner humor. Because the last time I saw Wagner humor, it was when they executed a Wagner soldier who had surrendered to the Ukrainians with a sledgehammer. I was at the HQ and they said that Zelensky had arrived. I rushed towards Bakhmut. The guys will now fire from this gun. If he pays attention, we're ready to meet at any moment. At the same time, we could decide what belongs to whom. We fired. No response. What's up? Can you say in Morse code, Vladimir, we're here, to Zelensky, since they say he's in Bakhmut. All right, will do. Attention, fragmentation full. We will finish with the Morse code. Maybe we can meet before the evening. We used Morse code, said, Dear Vladimir, we're located nearby. Ready to talk, discuss any questions, no problem. Okay, well, I'm gonna be honest. If I had like a full private military company, I would want to like be, I would be a lot more humorous than this. And I don't mean to say that to like say I'm the funniest guy on earth, but like you have like a full like army of soldiers at your disposal, and this is the funniest response you could think of. Like I would have like taped like a dildo to a drone and be like, we're gonna attack you with the type of stuff you like, you know, lean into like the Russian homophobe or something, like something that would at least like be more like shock value, grab your attention, like, oh my god, he's really trying to dunk on Zelensky, but it's like artillery with Morse, whatever. This is the best the Russians could respond with. Yeah, okay, Diet Putin is Diet Putin.